and it also goes against women's rights. I mean, if you cannot define what a woman is, how can you protect women and how can you fight for their rights? This is a huge problem, and I would love to hear from you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. Today I've got a very interesting article, very interesting situation to discuss with you. If you haven't heard, there was a student in the Catholic school board. His name was Josh Alexander, and he got arrested because he opposed biological males in the women's washrooms. So he's got some religious beliefs regarding this, what constitutes being a man or a woman. He also seems to have some scientific beliefs as well, rooted in biology. And I guess the school board did not like what he had to say. Before we get started, though, on covering this story, I just wanted to share with you really quick, what does the Waterloo District School Board have to say on the change rooms? And I think you might be a little bit surprised to find out what they actually write about it. So why don't we have a look at this open letter that they sent to me, very conveniently, down over here at the bottom, Administrative Procedure 1235. Now this is the very procedure that I criticized. And let me just show you. Once we open the procedure, if we scroll down to page 4 over here, this is what I covered in terms of a school should not disclose a student's gender status to the student's parent or guardians. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. But let's have a look. Let's go down over here. Washroom access. Under the Ontario Human Rights Code, all students have the right to safe restroom facilities and the right to use a washroom that best corresponds to the student's gender identity, regardless of the student's sex assigned at birth. Requests for accommodation may include the use of one or both gendered washroom or the use of a private single-stall washroom. In bold, in case you did not understand, the student's self-identification is the sole measure of their gender. Now below this, they also talk about the dress code and that a student should be permitted to wear what they want to express their gender in accordance with their gender identity, as long as the attire is acceptable according to the student dress code standards. They also talk about sports and extracurricular activities. If we read over here, a student should be able to compete in sports in accordance to their lived gender identity. And if we go down, they also talk about the restrooms. And look at this sentence, gender segregation in other areas. As a general rule, gender segregation should be avoided where possible. Well, I find that very interesting because they are allowing biological men to enter women's spaces, to enter the change rooms. So on the surface, when I read something like this, it makes it seem like they're going out of their way to give people privacy. Now, a lot of these change rooms, they already have private areas where you can change. You know, if you go to the men's change room, there's stalls as well. If you go to the washroom, there's stalls. So you have the privacy. There's also gender neutral washrooms as well. Everybody can access. But what they do is they take this one step further. And that step is to ensure even more privacy. We are going to allow biological men to go into the women's change room. I mean, it's absurd. And it seems to me like the biggest concern is to make these people feel comfortable at the expense of everybody else being uncomfortable. So this is a pretty big problem. So as you can see, the Waterloo District School Board definitely promotes this kind of behavior. Like I read, gender segregation should be avoided where possible. That's a statement by the Waterloo District School Board, and that's what they're going to promote. So let's have a quick look at this article. I'm going to bring it up. Catholic student opposed to biological males in women's washroom arrested for attending school. Grade 11 student Josh Alexander has been arrested for attending St. Joseph Catholic School in Ontario. I have just been arrested and charged at my Catholic high school for attending class after being excluded for indicating my intent to adhere to my religious beliefs. Now, this is very interesting because the school board always goes on about rights. And, they're protecting everything that they do. They say they want to do in accordance to the human rights. However, when somebody seems to not adhere to their ideology and say, my religious right says that maybe men shouldn't be going to the women's areas, suddenly that is infringing on rights, right? So, in my opinion, how are the religious rights of Josh Alexander being protected? Well, they are not being protected because it seems to me like his rights are being overridden. Alexander was told by the principal he can only return to school if he agreed not to use the dead name of any transgender student and agreed to exclude himself from his 2 afternoon classes because those classes are attended by 2 transgender students who disapprove of Josh's religious beliefs. Well, it seems like Josh also disapproves, and probably a whole lot of people disapprove of men going to the women's change room. I mean, this is so absurd that this needs to be talked about. And this stuff, like I said, this is written in the school policy. You could read all of this for yourself, right? So let's continue. Alexander attended school on January 9th regardless. The school board hired lawyers who wrote to Kitchen on January 9th objecting to the publication of the details of how Josh was being treated by the school board. Mr. Kitchen responded, noting that the issuing of a further suspension and trespass notice is unnecessary, escalating an extreme response to him simply attending classes. The school board then took the position that Josh could not appeal his suspensions based on a technicality. Josh's desire is to appeal his suspension on his own and through Kitchen as his lawyer. Despite demonstrating to the school board he has standing to appeal the board's disciplinary decisions against him, the board has refused to hear his appeals, Kitchen said in a press release. Alexander had hoped to return to school at the start of the second semester Monday. However, upon informing the school board he would continue to adhere to his religious beliefs regarding biblical sexuality and gender, the school board responded by excluding Josh from attending St. Joseph's for the rest of the school year. Obviously, the school board is sending a message here that they are sticking to their ideology, and it doesn't matter what biology says. And when you hear the school board talk about sex, they say that it's assigned at birth. If you've listened to the podcast Dark Horse with Brett Weinstein and his wife, who are evolutionary biologists, they say that sex is not assigned at birth. You don't get sex assigned and here's a list of things that go on with being assigned this at birth. No, sex is not assigned. Sex is actually observed. And I know this to be true because there are billions of people on Earth and everybody is here because of a woman. I don't really know how else they've gotten here, right? If you know somebody that, was born out of a biological male, you let me know. Now, the problem with this transgender movement is not that people want to dress up and be something else. The problem is that the affirmations that they do are life-changing. Talking like medical interventions that completely destroy the body. You know, for a minor to undergo therapy and to be given hormones, it causes sterilization, right? And these affirmation procedures will sterilize a minor before they even have the opportunity to say if they want a family or not, right? This is from an early age. I remember watching on YouTube a long time ago, there was a culture that was doing foot binding to women. And they were saying like they're abusing the bodies of women and they're mutilating. And I remember thinking, that's horrible. I'm not really understanding how this culture can see foot binding. Like it looks very painful. Their feet are all distorted. They can't even walk properly. And I thought that was mutilation, right? Now what we are doing in our culture is like even worse than that, right? We are doing this to kids and we are celebrating this behavior. Like I said, if you are an adult, you already had kids and now you want to pretend you're something else, this is not what we're talking about. We are talking about minors who do not have the experience to consent, who do not have any sexual experiences, and yet the school board continues to push this kind of behavior. So obviously Josh has some religious beliefs about this, and he believes that men and women are different, and science as well, it is observed, right? Like men and women are biologically different, and no amount of hormones or surgeries or whatever you want to do will change that fact. It's just impossible. And this upsets a lot of people who do believe this ideology, but really that's okay. It's okay to be upset because it doesn't actually change reality if it upsets you. And some people really struggle with grasping reality, which is fine. It's, you know, they need to have that experience to realize that it's not going to change for them just because they're upset. So this kind of behavior, by the way, is also, you could see it in public behavior. So I go swimming with my kids quite often, and there's a special program that they have during swimming. So have a look at this. It's called the BU Swim Program. It's dedicated swim times for trans and non-binary individuals, as well as their friends and family members, to use our pools in a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment. During the BU swims, we'll provide added privacy for everyone in attendance. Change rooms will be accessible to everyone, and all swimming attire is acceptable. Like I said, I'm not really sure where the added privacy is because they already have the change room and the stalls. There's already neutral washrooms as well. The only difference with this is the fact that men can go into the women's washroom. And the irony of this is saying that you're adding privacy for everyone and then allowing this kind of behavior to happen. Furthermore, saying that all swimming attire is accessible. I mean, this is just a situation that is just brewing for abuse to happen, right? Because anybody can go in there and claim to be anything, right? And let's say I have daughters, right? You have some kids, some little girls who go there and they decide to wear their short shorts or whatever, and they're not going to wear a top because they think they're boys, right? And then you have some people there, their sole motivation is to go and they like to see little kids without tops on, right? You don't know whatever their motivation, and they'll just say, well, I'm an ally for this. So the parents are putting their kids in a situation, and really when I see this, when they say that it's included for everybody, an inclusive environment, I really believe that this inclusive environment is also including people who are attracted to minors. And this is a problem. what you'll see coming down the pipes is this notion of mature minors. Now, I'm going to make a separate video about that, but basically, as the Canadian MAID program is rolling in, they want minors, they want kids to be able to consent to self-deletion. So they're using this terminology called mature minors. Now, if you're thinking about mature minors, right, and their age limit is 12 years old, this is going to be acceptable as well when it comes to sexual behavior. Suddenly you're a mature minor and you can consent to sexual behavior with an adult, and now you have the minor attracting people, and you also have the new terminology that they're trying to make popular, adults attracted minors, right? And they're saying, well, no, the kids want this. So really, right now, as I mentioned before, a child cannot consent in Ontario under the age of 16, regardless of their perceived consent. And this is just on another level of absurdity. And I can't believe that this stuff is happening. So, I will be watching Josh's story very closely. I will say I'm very happy to see that he's standing by what he believes, and it really is exposing the school boards and exposing the schools into exactly what their agenda is over here, right? And it's really one of those things. The school board might think that it's helping people, but really, I believe that the school board is putting kids, I believe, in a situation that is very easily taken advantage of and could be deemed as child abuse. I'm not really sure why biological men can go into the women's washroom, but I want you to let me know. In the comments below, let me know, do you think this is acceptable? Do you think that men should be able to go into the women's change rooms? I'm not really seeing very many women go into the men's change rooms, I can tell you that, but I have been told that women are not happy with this, and it also goes against women's rights. I mean, if you cannot define what a woman is, how can you protect women, and how can you fight for their rights? This is a huge problem, and I would love to hear from you. Well, until next time, take care.